Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. On the beginning of April, I want to talk about a book that I read, some children's literature, which I cover on this channel from time to time. I want to talk about a book that focuses on a magic talking animal that changes the lives of two children. I am referring to The Cat in the Hat by Dr. Seuss, which was published in 1957. For those who don't know, Dr. Seuss, otherwise known as Theodore Geisel, is or was an American author who lived in the 1900s. He was known for writing children's literature, stuff like The Cat in the Hat, which I'm talking about today, Green Eggs and Ham, Oh, the Places You Will Go, which is often given to high schoolers as a way of like letting them know that they're passing into the next stage in life. One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish, and so many other stories. His stories have kind of been serving as a placeholder for young kids, a good way to get young kids introduced to reading and whatnot. They were introduced in my childhood, and I know it's a big thing in Western culture. Not so sure about Eastern society, Asian cultures or whatnot, or even Africa, but I do know that at least in America, Dr. Seuss is a pretty big deal. So much so that when they decided to stop publishing some of his work, it became a whole political to-do with some of his more recent works. And in addition to doing all of that, he was also a political cartoonist, saying some pretty unsavory things about the Germans and the Japanese during World War II, and even supporting Japanese internment. Although he later turned on the other side of that and noted how it was unjust and whatnot, and also being pro-abortion, as well as many other things in his sort of political outlook. So a very fascinating writer, both in the terms of what he wrote, as well as the more adult things that he focused on. And so without further ado, let's talk about The Cat in the Hat by Dr. Seuss. But before I do, I just wanted to highlight that this video is sponsored by both the Center for Libertarian Studies as well as the Central Intelligence Agency. If you're looking to destabilize a South American or possibly African nation, or if you're simply looking to funnel drugs into minority neighborhoods in the United States, you can't go wrong with the Central Intelligence Agency. Thank you for sponsoring my video today. And without further ado, let's talk about The Cat in the Hat. I'll do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we'll move on from there. So The Cat in the Hat focuses on Sally and her brother, who are bored at home. Their mother is away. They appear to have been left alone, even though they are quite young, which is always peculiar. But it's raining outside and they have nothing to do. But things change pretty quickly when a knock on the door reveals a giant cat, a bipedal cat walking on two legs and wearing a hat, who, coincidentally enough, just calls himself the Cat in the Hat. He shows up and asks if the children want to have fun. However, the fish that the children keep objects to this and begins talking and telling them that they're sure to get in trouble if they engage in the shenanigans with this cat. At that point, the cat just ignores the fish and begins balancing various objects and being very silly about it, which the kids love. But unfortunately, the cat drops everything. And the kids and the fish are upset by it because it messes up the house a little bit. From there, the cat goes and comes back and brings a giant box, with two things that will make things a little bit more fun in his view, at least. He reveals thing one and thing two silly creatures that do all kinds of zany things around the house, and end up wrecking things a little bit more, which deeply upsets the kids. kids and the fish as well. And the kids confront the cat and they're like, gotta leave, this is gonna get us in trouble. And the cat sadly leaves, but the kids are left to lament that the house is a mess and their mother will surely be back soon. And like they're gonna get in trouble for all of this. Fortunately, the cat shows up again and with a fancy machine that helps them clean everything and allows them to have a little fun despite also having to clean up and whatnot, showing that there are great things in moderation. And then the cat leaves and the children are left to reflect on it. Their mother shows up and asks them how things went, and they're left to ponder as the story ends. Like, do we tell our parents about this? Do we tell mom about this giant cat, or do we keep it to ourselves? And that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there is quite a bit worth talking about with The Cat in the Hat. The first thing worth noting is, of course, the magical realism and exaggeration that takes place in this children's literature, children's story. You have obviously a talking cat in a hat with all these fancy machines, these zany machines that do peculiar things. Dr. Seuss was known for writing about these fantastical machines that don't quite make sense, but allow you to do strange and wild things. It's present here in The Cat in the Hat, but it's part of his like overall sort of branching literature. And then you have Thing 1 and Thing 2, which show up in a box, but when they're unleashed, they basically run around like a tornado, wrecking the entire house and causing a little bit of fun, but also a little bit of a panic in the process. And then you have the talking fish, of course, who's like, we shouldn't be doing that. We should avoid wrecking the house and engaging in these shenanigans at all costs. Like, we don't want to listen to this cat in the hat. He's a stranger. It's a bit unsafe. It's pretty funny here. It's also funny in the movie movie adaptation, which I understand a lot of people don't like, and I'm kind of on the fence. I like how bad it is, but I do like the talking fish in the movie because it's one of the things that is pretty true to the adaptation of the book, and I like that exaggeration in this story. It's something that Dr. Seuss does fairly well, and it only adds to like the imagination wonder of Dr. Seuss's aims when he's writing for children's literature. But Dr. Seuss isn't merely talking about magical realism and exaggeration and all of those things. He's looking a bit deeper. He's talking about the very fabric of society. And that the big theme that shows up in this story is that of the dangers of socialism. It's very clear that Dr. Seuss is not a fan of socialism, that he is very much promoting the wonderful and beautiful capitalism, the very fabric of American society in this story. Like, both Sally and her brother kind of represent the common people. They're being presented with two different sort of value systems in this case. You have the socialism or communism of the Cat in the Hat contrasted against their old life with their mother, where nothing bad happened. It was rather boring, but sometimes boring can be very safe. And so they're given these sort of choices here, but also Dr. Seuss is arguing that boredom can lead to bad decisions sometimes. That you might not realize how good you have it. That capitalism is actually very wonderful, and when there's no problems, you're not likely to notice that there's no problems, and so that boredom might lead you to seek out other things when in fact you shouldn't be seeking out other things. And indeed, the cat in this story represents socialism. You see the red on the Cat in the Hat's head, indicating that he is very much a red. He is very much in line with that communist socialist ideology. But even though he presents the kids with all these options, and they do have a little fun, it's very clear that too much is a bad thing. You can have a little bit of affordable health care or a little bit of social safety nets, but too much will ruin your society, and it's best if people pull each other up by their bootstraps. We have to focus on individualism. Too much collectivism is bad for American society. And I think that's reflected in Thing 1 and Thing 2 in this story. Dr. Seuss presents them as an example of oversaturation of what people perceive as good socialist ideas, such as universal basic income or or universal health care, affordable health care. People often clamor for those things, but as shown by Dr. Seuss here, when people want those things, when people clamor for them, they fail to realize that when they get them, it could actually make society a lot worse, and that's what's happening for Sally and her brother in this story. But very fortunately, the cat leaves at the end of the story, and the children are able to see that there's a return to the capitalist normalcy that everyone loves, that there are definitely no problems with, and you should not examine any deeper. You should not ask questions about. And so when they return to that capitalism, they're able to remember, oh, this was actually good. We don't want that socialist, whatever, that was happening with the cat. And when the mother shows up, that's really a question that Dr. Seuss is posing to everyone. Like, should you tell the mother, who in this case is represented by the governing officials, should you tell them about the socialism? Like this, they might be curious if you're interested in it, or if you want to stick with the tried and true and reliable capitalism. And so the children have a choice, and I think Dr. Seuss is arguing that you should definitely stick with the tried and true capitalism, because socialism is bad and nasty, and you don't want any of that. So a lot to think about there with what Dr. Seuss is trying to present about these differing ideologies. So anyway, those are my thoughts on The Cat in the Hat by Dr. Seuss, a pretty quality book, one that people really love, especially in childhood. It stood the test of time, and a lot of people don't really examine it that deeply, but it has a lot of implications, especially for the fact that it's arguing that capitalism is golden and wonderful and beautiful, and you shouldn't question anything else about it. No matter how many times people complain, those people are just complainers. So if you have anything to comment about in this video, do so in the comments below. I would love to hear from you, and perhaps you can talk about my sponsor in this video as well, the wonderful and beautiful CIA, as well as the Center for Libertarian Studies. Let's have a discussion about those wonderful sponsors as well, who had no part in any other aspect of this video or the analysis that I chose to do here. Oh, what's that? Oh, you can just deposit that check in my account. Oh, and anyways, otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about The Cat in the Hat or Dr. Seuss if they don't already know, and also the beauty of capitalism. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and capitalist-only travels. Farewell.